At this time, I'd like to call our work session meeting to order to discuss the shipping container ordinance. So let's get started.
John, do you have the mics on?
Microphone.
Oh, okay. I don't think anybody's ever complained about not being able to hear Michael, but maybe.
Most of the times I'm being told to shut up.
Mayor and Council, as you are aware, today is our work session for the shipping container ordinance. The town has been working diligently to get something prepared. We decided to work with our outside consultant, Mr. Michael Harvey, for his focus to help us draft something for shipping containers. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Harvey, and Mr. Harvey will search through this ordinance with you guys, entertain any questions that you may have, and also try to address any concerns that you may have before we get ready to take this before a public hearing matter. Without further ado, Mr. Harvey, info. Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
Good evening. Michael Harvey, good to see you all again. I'm going to keep this very brief because I know you all have other things to do. In approaching this issue, I was given the following direction. There was a concern that the ordinance that we had helped you all redraft and revise was too restricting, but as it related to the use of what I'm going to call temporary storage or temporary structures for storage on both residential and non-residential property. And after talking with Randy and Sean and other staff, we had a very long review of what your previous code allowed and what direction we had received in moving forward in updating your last zoning ordinance to address some changes in state law. But to try and provide the town with suitable flexibility to address the concern without providing additional opportunities for anything other than just storage. Because there is a concern, as I've heard it from staff, that the storage facilities aren't necessarily going to be used for that purpose. They're going to be used for other purposes. We drafted an ordinance designed to address the temporary use of a structure for storage on both residential and non-residential properties. So without further ado, I'm going to summarize. Your current regulations, both as I tweaked them and as they existed before I touched them, ban the use of tractor trailer containers or shipping containers as accessory structures in residential districts. I recommended the town consider an amendment that would allow for a shipping container to be placed in a residential district for temporary storage purposes. Specifically, I can think of several instances where somebody's renovating a house, needs to store items temporarily. There's an emergency and the house needs to be evacuated so the emergency can be addressed. Or as need arises, there's an opportunity, maybe somebody needs an ability to temporarily store items and then remove them from the property. So we initiated a text amendment recommendation to the town that effectively would allow a container in a residential district. It prohibits it from being located in the front yard. Why? You don't allow accessory structures in your front yard by current ordinance, and if this is going to be treated like an accessory structure, you're not going to treat this any differently than you treat any other accessory structure you already permit. Has to be located either in line or behind the principal residential dwelling unit, and it has to be located a minimum of 5 feet from side to rear property line. That's standard what you already have in your ordinance based on current accessory uses. You're not going to treat this one any differently. We have recommended you consider a size limit of 300 square feet. This is the section dealing with where it's to be stored. And we recommend that it needs to be removed in 90 days from installation, with the caveat that if it's being put on a parcel of property for the purpose of addressing the completion of a zoning compliance permit for renovation of the structure or a building permit, it will be removed at the expiration of that permit, once the work is done, and it needs to be removed within 30 days. At the recommendation of staff, we added language saying you cannot stack a shipping container. And in talking with staff this morning, we've added a prohibition to no more than 2 being stored on a residentially zoned property at any one time. You cannot store these units on undeveloped property. We're not allowing the wholesale storage of shipping containers or temporary storage devices on undeveloped parcels of property. The caveat is, or the exception is, if I have a valid building permit to build a home, I can store it, but there has to be work ongoing. There has to be work connected to why that unit's stored on the property. One other comment that I have captured this morning, I heard from staff, is to make sure there's sufficient language spelling out it has to be located behind the principal facade of the structure, can't be located in the front yard. So we're going to add that language as well. For non-residential, which is covered by an entirely different section of the code, we are going to be dealing with establishing the similar locational requirements in terms of where temporary storage facilities are to be placed. If they're stored for longer than 60 days, they have to be made permanent. You can't just have an arbitrary storage of a tractor trailer rig or a shipping container. If you're going to store it there and use it as a permanent structure, then it has to meet all the setup standards to be a permanent structure, including buffering or screening. Only allowed in the B1 and I1 districts. Have to be located within the side or rear of the property, not in front of the building line, so not in the parking lot. Can't take up required parking. So if you have a land use that has a requirement per your ordinance for 100 required parking spaces, and you only have 100, you can't store a shipping container in a required parking space because that makes the land use non-conforming to your parking regulations. Has to be stored somewhere on the site that meets setbacks and meets applicable standards. If you have surplus parking, then yes, mooring it or storing it temporarily in a parking space is not a big deal, but it can take up required parking. Let's see, I'm just hitting the highlights and making sure I answer your questions. For non-residential developments, we're saying no more than 3 can be stored on the parcel at any time, and the size is a proportional limit to the size of the structure. So if it's under 10,000 square feet, you're limited to 324 square feet. If it's between 10 and 50,000 square foot, it's 15%, and if it's over 50,000, 0.01, it can be 20% of the gross floor area of the structure. One other key component is that the structure in and of itself with a temporary shipping container cannot be turned into a sign. Ancillary language on the structure is not a problem. You have truck bodies that have names, company, whatever. You can't put up a sign or a banner saying, "Rent me, call this number." It's not for free advertising, it's just for storage. And that's for both residential and non-residential districts. In talking with the attorney early this morning, he recommended that we consider a definition. So I offer this for discussion purposes only, as the attorney hasn't had a chance to look at it, and I really haven't had a chance to determine if I like it. I just came up with it. Shipping container is a standardized, reusable container of storage, container or structure designed to secure and or store goods for transportation or storage, typically made of steel or metal. Container shall be enclosed on all sides with a door which can be secured locked. You don't want an open unit. You want it enclosed if it's going to be for secure storage. So with that, are there any questions of me? I know it's a lot of information to take in. I know you've already had some conversations about this, and I certainly don't want to micromanage the review, but I do want to solicit any feedback and begin moving forward with a final draft for staff to review.
I have not had a chance to go through this, so I do apologize. I'm hoping we can go through line by line. I guess my first 2 questions are, number 1, I thought we already addressed in our ordinance the use of like pods and construction material. I didn't think we were reinventing that, but my concern also with not being able to advertise, I think pods already do that. Like they'll say, pod, call us at whatever.
Right, and that's
So-
not something you're gonna be able to change. What you can't do is have
Paint on it.
an
come
additional
to
sign
Kids
placed
Nursery.
on it other
Okay.
than what was there when it was delivered. The intent is to not allow it to be converted into effectively outdoor advertising or a billboard.
My second question is, you use the term tractor trailer. I thought we were just doing shipping containers and not like the body of a truck.
In non-residential districts, you would allow tractor trailer.
Both? Okay.
They're specifically prohibited in residential. The only thing I'm allowing in residential is a shipping container
Okay.
On a temporary basis.
on a temporary
For
basis.
construction
It's on
or,
permitted building permit.
And a pod is, are we considering a pod the same term, or are we using two different terms?
No, same term for me, it's a shipping container. It's gonna meet the same definition we came up with.
And we can include it in the definition. We could add pod in there, in the wording.
Well, I guess one question is, 90 days is short if there's a fire in the house, but 90 days is a long time if somebody's moving over the weekend. So, I mean, we need to define the difference, because
Well, the problem with defining it from that standpoint is, remember, if you've had a fire, you're gonna have to normally get a building permit to rehabilitate the structure. So from my standpoint, it's covered under subparen DI, which is if you have a valid building permit, the 90-day doesn't apply. It applies for the length of the permit.
the permit.
Yeah.
So that means the next question is 90 days too long in general for the regular one? It's a long
I'll
time.
be blunt, I picked a number out of the air. So,
90 seems like a long time for a general moving purposes or short-term issue.
Councilman, you think 60 would be
I'm thinking 30.
30? I mean, we're working the script of the council. What do y'all?
I think, but this is residential, right? It's not going.
this is residential,
Yeah.
we're in residential
This is
right
next to
this
your
second.
house.
and if you were putting an addition on or doing some sort of reconstruction of the inside, then we would be dealing with the permitting situation,
Correct.
so it would last the time.
That'd be the
Because
And
plan.
Nash
30
County
does make more
won't, Nash
sense.
County won't permit no building permit until they come to a zone permit in the town for any renovation or whatever. So they have something on file with us. And they'll
And I
have
think
to say-
somebody's doing the remodel of their house. We need to be fair and let them have it for the time they need it, but I mean, moving or just a short term, 90 days is a long time.
Well, I mean, 90 days is a long time. 30 days may be considered short to other people, so a happy medium probably would be 60. That
Or 45.
That way, yeah, 60 or 45. That way you're not restricting anybody from doing whatever, because 45 or 60, I wouldn't go with. 30, I'm thinking you're putting it too short.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I remember, I had a neighbor, during COVID, and, she and her son, elderly lady, her son lived in the house. His son passed away, and they took after the mother got well, they took her somewhere else to another facility. Her children brought in one of these, shipping containers that we're talking about, right? And they kept it there for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, just so they could clean out the house and things of that nature. So, you know, there again, I'm comfortable with 45 days. Just to be fair, 45 days would be adequate, more than adequate.
I think it's more than adequate.
And remember, this is only the temporary use of a container.
Right.
In residential area.
Correct.
Yeah.
This doesn't stop you from getting a permit to put an accessory structure on your property and use it for permanent storage. This is just a temporary activity.
So we'll back up.
If you want to apply for a permit to put an accessory structure on your property, you can do that. This does not restrict the use of that structure on a permanent basis. This is only for the temporary use of a shipping container or a storage container on the property for specific activities.
But when you say accessory use on residential, we are not allowing shipping containers as an
No.
accessory use. So you're talking about a shed or garage
Right.
or
I'm
something.
just reminding you all that if you want something permanent, you go through the appropriate permitting process to do it.
Okay.
This does not impact that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So the board would like us to consider 45 days versus 90?
Yes.
Let's go with 45.
Okay. Any other comments on the residential that I need to keep in mind?
think that addresses the main concern.
Okay. And for non-residential, again, I think that the larger point is going to be this. How I took the direction from staff is that you wanted additional flexibility for the B1 and the I1 district. You did not want them stored in front of the building. Side and rear is fine. And if it's there for more than 60 days, they have to then make it a permanent facility, and it has to be screened and buffered in accordance with the code.
On some sort of flat surface.
Not in required parking, correct.
Michael, what does that all entail, making permanent? Like pouring a pad of concrete and setting it on it?
Bluntly, securing it to the ground, because state building codes only require that it be anchored.
Okay,
But it will have to be screened in accordance with your code. So if it's going to be permanent, then it needs to be treated as a permanent structure.
How can we address the situation that we have now? We've got a shipping container that has been moved from the ground and placed on a tractor trailer rig, and it's being moved around on different property. They've made it mobile.
All they're doing is parking a car, unfortunately.
Okay.
And I don't know enough of the scenario to speak educatedly, but if it's on a trailer bed and it's being moved around and parked, it's a vehicle that's being moved around and parked.
But it's not self-propelled. It's,
You can't move
you
it
can't move it without
without tractor.
the tractor part.
But it's,
It's being left without the part that can move it.
Okay, I'm gonna need to get more information before I'm gonna respond to the question, because I don't think I have enough information to offer you some advice on it.
tractor still hooked to the trailer.
it's a shipping container placed on a flatbed trailer.
It's on the flatbed, but the tractor still hooked to it.
And the pickup that pulls it, or the truck that pulls it, is not attached to the trailer.
It was yesterday.
Well, I would probably argue that
When I saw it,
you're citing the property owner where it's parked for effectively allowing off-site advertising inconsistent with
Okay,
the
the
code.
tractor working on that. Okay.
That's an enforcement matter. That's my knee-jerk reaction, but again, I don't know if I have enough. I want to tell you one thing and get you in a legal scenario. That's something I have to talk with your staff and your attorney about.
I've been told that the tractor has been moved from it, so that clears that up.
So I mean, the real problem is, for years, people have had shipping containers respectfully, and it hasn't been a problem. And then recently, it's not respectful. So that's where our problem is. So,
Well, I think unfortunately, my somewhat snarky response, and I apologize in advance, is we're going to give you the tools to address the concern. Those that have been following the letter of the law are going to be held just as accountable. Those who may not be, that you're designed or you're looking to work to address these various issues. But I think that if your central goal is to say, we understand there may be a need for temporary storage in XYZ circumstances, you're amending your code to recognize those standards, specifying size, how big it can be, location where it has to be, and duration. And those are really all that you should be concerned with. You also are concerned with the notion that the storage container in and of itself has to be there for an accepted purpose and not just parked on property or stored on property for advertising. And one of the reasons we say you can't put it in the front yard is because we're treating it as any other accessory structure. Accessory structures are not allowed in the front yard of the property, and they're not allowed in advance of the principal facade of the structure. So that should hopefully address some of these concerns.
So a question, Michael, that's come up, shipping containers versus the local hardware store that has some backyard utility sheds erected and put in their front yard for display purposes for sale.
That's the display of a retail item.
So our shipping container dealer says, or he has his shipping containers placed in front yards right now, not on his own property, but at other properties.
You don't allow Lowe's to go store a shed on somebody's property and put up a sign saying, "Come to Lowe's and buy our shed." That's offsite advertising, and it is a commercialization of a land use inconsistent with your current ordinance. So if this gentleman wants to store and display shipping containers, he needs to do what every other business in Nashville does: rent an appropriate location, establish the business consistent with the ordinance, and display his or her wares
On his property.
on his property that he either rents, owns, or is in some way, shape, or fashion controlling.
Right.
And has a sales office there for that purpose.
You don't allow a used car dealer, you don't allow a used car dealer to go park his or her used cars on various properties with a sign saying, "Come see me at 1601 Nashville Lane." They have to be stored at 1601 Nashville Lane. There's a difference if I'm a property owner wanting to sell my vehicle and put up a for sale sign on my vehicle. That is my car, it's my property, it's under my control. There is no difference when you're extrapolating this example to this scenario. It has to be stored on your property, has to be under your control, whether you rent or own, whatever, and it has to be connected with the principal of land use operation. I'm not a big fan, and this is no offense to Lowe's and Home Depot, I'm not a big fan of the wholesale storage of retail structures and parking lots for sale either, but that's their business, that's on their property, and they're offering those for sale. And the only quote-unquote advertising on it is the price tag.
Yeah, just because they're out front of the store,
Yeah,
it's assumed they're for sale.
right, and they can't be in required parking, but you've heard me say that, so I won't.
They're in parking, and it's requirement.
Yeah.
They're in parking. So, and we have, I want to say Walmart has one on the side, and so we're saying it's okay, but they have room in the back. So I mean, how do we deal with that? I mean, it's on the side, but it's actually the front of where everybody drives.
The only thing you can technically, from my point, regulate is you don't want storage facilities in front of the building in the front yard, side and rear, where it's not going to impact either pedestrians or customers coming, parking, accessing the site. Storage is out of the way. I'm not sure that there's a legal ability to compel and say all storage has to be to the rear.
I think the one Walmart that you're speaking of, it is because of the way the building is turned around. It's not in front, it's on the side.
Side and rear.
It's on the side.
You know, and it's
on the
actually,
rear.
as far as
You can see it, but it's still on the side.
out of the way, it's probably the best spot, but you see it. So I mean, it's not the prettiest spot.
Well, and I understand a concern about aesthetic, but if you would allow the erection of an accessory structure in the side yard of a non-residential land use, unless you're going to restrict storage, permanent storage facilities from the side yards and only to the rear, that's the only way I could legitimately allow this. But the other problem is, because of how state law is worded right now, I can't create non-conformities. So if I turn Walmart with an ordinance text amendment into being non-conforming because of where they have their storage facility right now, the town is in violation of state law as it currently reads. So I'm preserving and maintaining what I think your ordinance had allowed previously while putting in enough specificity to address the temporary storage issue.
Michael, what about this situation where somebody has a B1 lot and they get a dozen shipping containers, put them alongside of each other on a permanent concrete pad, and say that that's a mini storage unit now instead of shipping containers?
As long as they have a zoning compliance permit duly issued by the town of Nashville approving that land use and that model, then that's perfectly legal. But they have to go through the permitting process to do it. They can't just arbitrarily get a B1 zone parcel of property and say, well, I'm going to be a self-storage facility. Well, you have to go through site plan approval. But in that scenario, as long as they've gone through the appropriate proposal, meet appropriate setbacks, landscaping, any screening required that you might require for a self-storage facility, parking, etc. As long as it's been done in compliance with your zoning ordinance, there's nothing inherently illegal about that scenario.
And they would have to go through Nash County to get a building permit for it.
Correct.
The ones that I've seen that have done that, they have lights in them, so they have electrical.
Yep. And I'm not sure it's germane to this discussion, but the question was posed to me several months ago by the staff. Could these units be used for residential purposes? And the blunt answer is yes, provided they're brought up to meet state building code.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a requirement of the Nash County Inspections Department. But then the issue becomes, remember, in your ordinance, you only allow one principal land use on the property. So if there's a house, you can't have a second house unless it qualifies as an auxiliary dwelling unit, which we have established in your new updated ordinance. Location requirements, size requirements, it would just have to be brought up to applicable state building code. Jurisdiction where I used to be employed, there was a gentleman that created his house out of shipping containers. And bluntly, it worked for him. And he tweaked the interior, brought it up the applicable code. It's actually covered by siding. And the only reason I know it's a shipping container house is because I saw it being built. So
that can still occur as long as they
have to get the
whatever
permits.
building
Yeah.
codes.
Yes, ma'am.
They can't move it in and move in.
No. Anytime you're establishing the land use, and I apologize, I know you all know this, but just to put on the record the answer to the question. In order to establish the land use, you have to apply for and obtain all necessary relative permits. So if I want to move a shipping container on an undeveloped parcel property and claim it's a single family residence, great. Your first stop is to get the zoning compliance permit from the staff. Your second stop is to Nash County inspections. And Nash County would then have to issue a building permit saying this will work, but it has to be brought up to the residential state building code.
So essentially, that's how you would enforce it.
Correct. You're enforcing a lot of some of the what ifs of life through the permitting process and establishment of illegal land uses or legal land uses, as the case may be.
That's probably a beautiful home.
It was a beautiful
Yeah.
home, and had I not known how it was constructed, I may never have known it was a shipping container house.
Well, just like the one that was presented to us a couple weeks ago.
$1 million house.
$1 million house. Do we need to put in the language that, let's say a residential and the B1 or I&I are next to each other, do we need to put that the shipping container needs to be a certain number of feet from a residential structure?
Since this is already occurring in the context of your zoning ordinance, the applicable rules apply in terms of setbacks from residential districts or land uses. Even the temporary nature of the structure. You can't have development activity on a B1 or I1 zone lot inconsistent with your code. So if you say no activity within 100 feet, and I'm just throwing that out as the example, then you can't even have the temporary storage in that 100 feet because you can't have any activity associated with that land use within 100 foot of a residential district.
I don't think we have that.
We have setbacks.
You have setbacks, and that's where it would be covered.
Would you have buffer and
So
screen?
we'll have,
Yeah.
like, if it's in B1 button to residential, it has to get a type B buffer style behind it.
Okay.
Even for temporary or for
Well, it
permanent?
has to be around the whole structure anyway, so before we even get into a temporary use or temporary activity at all, you have to have the Class B landscape buffer surrounding the lot. That's automatically required. The
Say
issue,
it again?
when you're developing a B1 or an I1 zone property, at the time you're developing, you have to install the mandatory screening, the mandatory buffering per your code right
So
now before
we
you're.
have, I think what we're addressing is we already have
They got-
industrial and
Existing.
We got
existing,
it.
so they
We got
are already industrial or B1.
Then if they're adjacent to a residential district, they should already comply with your buffer standards.
After the fact, because they were purchased before we applied the buffer standards.
We have one person, Michael, that has an I1 that abuts residential. They put up fencing and screening, but then if you're looking at B1 downtown district, when you come out of downtown, we have a B1 business that right adjacent behind it is a residential neighborhood. That the only screening they have is maybe a few trees that was planted. And I
Before
think
we had that requirement.
before we had, I think the council feels like, from you look at that person from the residential side, you go in their backyard, you can still see the containers on the property.
Unfortunately, you're probably gonna have to live with that.
And grandfather.
Right.
Well, and I hate that term, but yes, everybody understands that term. It's a legally operating non-conforming scenario.
So I guess what we're trying to prevent is the use of shipping containers going forward without having proper screening and buffer requirements when it's next to a residential and we have an existing industrial or B1 area.
For
So,
me to locate the temporary structure, yes, ma'am, I would have to comply with any screening and buffering
Okay.
associated with that activity.
okay, so
But
it's temporary.
what it's not going to do, and I know you've all heard me, but I am going to make the statement again, what it's not going to do under the current provisions of state law is allow you to compel or otherwise require a property owner to bring their site into full compliance with the code just because they're doing this. And if the General Assembly ever adopts the proposed fix to downzoning, which restricts units of local government from downzoning property without the consent of the property owner, remember that the concept of non-conforming status is going to change dramatically in terms of ensuring and guaranteeing the perpetual rights of the property owner to make use of his or her property as it existed before it became non-conforming. So I suggest to those that have asked me questions about it, you're not going to have nonconformities any longer, you're going to have vesting. And it has to be voluntarily surrendered. And I know that's not the topic we're here to discuss, but I want to make sure everybody understands what limits I'm going to be operating under as I help move you forward.
So your comment on this first page says 6 foot, so we changed it from 5 foot to 6 foot?
It's 6, it's just 5 foot from an existing structure, but our ordinance says you have to be 6 foot from side and rear property lines.
That's the setback.
That's the setback, so we made that change.
Okay.
And me and Michael talked about that on Friday before you guys got your
Yeah.
new updated ones.
I typically have 5 foot, so yeah. Your ordinance mandates 6, you're going with your
Six is
code.
kind of odd.
Well, no, it's not odd. It's your code. It's not. There's nothing. You don't assign that. Not that you are, but your standard is your standard, and you're just going to ensure that your standard is universally enforced. I'm just used to a 5 foot, which doesn't mean
6
squat.
foot beginning. You've always said 6 foot setback.
So did you guys want to go through and have a reading of what's proposed?
Which one we using?
So, well, if you go to the red language on the first page, this allows temporary shipping containers in residential areas. It says a shipping container may be placed in a residential general use zoning district for temporary storage purposes, subject to the following. The unit shall not be installed in the front yard, and maybe we would add installed or / located. In the front yard of the property shall not be installed, stored on undeveloped property, and shall not be installed or displayed marketing purposes for a developed or undeveloped residential zone parcel of property.
So if somebody has 2 pieces of property and one has a building on it and one does not, they can't put a shipping container on the one that's not.
No, because we have a separate provision that says you can't store this on undeveloped property.
Okay.
They'd have to combine them. B of that section, unit shall not exceed 300 square feet in area. C, unit shall be installed in the side or rear yard, a minimum of 6 feet from applicable property lines. And D, unit shall be removed within 90 days from date of installation.
Would that
Change
be
that to
45?
45.
Okay. And then after that, if unit is installed in connection with a zoning compliance permit or a Nash County building permit for repair, renovation, or construction purposes, the container may be permitted to remain for the life of the permit. Temporary units shall be removed within 30 days of issuance of the certificate of compliance by Nash County Building and Inspections Department or the expiration of any permit authorizing development activities.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do permits have an expiration date?
1 year.
So if somebody's remodeling their house and it's taking them 3 years They can't have shipping containers.
If they, what they'll do, once the permit expires, 'cause we just had one done over there on Church Street, the gentleman had to come back in because Nash County would not renew it. He had to come back to the town, submit all the plans over again, review them, then go back to Nash County to get the permit renewed so that he can continue building on the house.
Raz, did you have any proposed tweaks for that language?
Well, you saw my little,
I'll meet with the town attorney, and he and I can insert his concerns so that,
editing.
There's nothing, it's nothing, just technical stuff, legal stuff, right? We don't even,
Yeah, I mean, I just suggested that since sub I after D was really a sub-paragraph to one special provision, it needs to be clear that that's not generally applicable regulations, that only applies in that special circumstance where you have a county permit, county inspections permit that allows you to go over that. Generally, that's just a note.
In E under that section, no stacking of shipping containers shall be allowed.
and as a recommendation of staff, I'm suggesting you add an F, effectively reading a maximum of 2 temporary containers shall be permitted on a parcel of property at any one time.
And then I think you said you were gonna add language so that, it's not
Right.
anywhere in front of the principal structure. So even if it's on the side of the property,
Right.
it's still behind the,
That would be G, behind the, must be behind the present structure.
like, is G already up there?
No. I'm gonna have to add it.
Okay.
so we're saying the front line,
Right, because
Right,
like, look
front
at my
and side,
property,
anything
that's a
behind.
corner lot. I could easily say this is on my side lot in the front yard, using the side as your standard. But if you use the front of your house as your standard, I have to keep it behind the house on the side lot.
And that's going in line with our fence regulation orders we got. Now, it has to come off the side and go straight back.
and so I'll make sure I understand you, but no, maybe it's not clear, maybe I'm not clear, but is it the front of the house back, or is it the back of the house back?
Oh, front.
And then it's on the side lots.
Is what it says?
What I said.
So this is the front of the house, Bill. You have to line up.
Okay, that's what I understood.
It's like the fence with
Does that say that? Where does it say that?
We're gonna add it.
You're gonna add that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What do we call that? With the front,
Behind the line of the principal facade of the structure located on the property.
okay,
Yes, sir.
y'all got it.
We'll go with
Well, then to, if you're good with the residential we'll go to the non-residential section, which is, S, additional standards on the second page. And it says additional standards, accessory structures and storage facilities for non-residential land uses. Number 2, the following standards shall apply to all non-residential development activities with respect to the location, screening, and use of accessory structures and other storage facilities, temporary or permanent, regardless of the non-residential, general or conditional use zoning designation. And then it goes into A. A is permitted accessory uses and structures include those listed in the various land use category sections detailed herein, and those meeting the following. Number 1, are clearly incidental to an allowed principal use or structure. 2, are subordinate to and serving an allowed principal use or structure. Number 3, and interrupt at any time if you have any question or want clarification on something. Are subordinate in area, extent, and purpose to the principal use or structure. Number 4, contribute to the comfort, convenience, or needs of occupants, business, or industry associated with the principal use or structure. And number B, or letter B, they have to be located on the same lot as the principal use. All accessory uses and structures shall be located on the same lot as the principal use or structure and not located within any street right of way. Kind of goes without saying,
Sometimes you have to say.
but that's right. Compliance with ordinance requirements. Accessory uses and structures shall conform to the applicable requirements of this ordinance, including this section. D is signs. Advertising materials or signage shall not be presented on the accessory structure. E, temporary storage units / shipping containers. Number 1 under that. Temporary storage units and/or shipping containers may be used as an accessory structure / temporary structure on a non-residential zone parcel, provided that A, shall only be permitted in the B1 and I1 zoning districts. B, they are located within the side or rear property areas behind the front building line of the principal structure, regardless of size of the property. Then I under that, under no circumstances may a temporary storage unit be placed / displayed on an undeveloped, non-residentially zoned parcel or property for storage or display purposes. Meaning, if there's going to be one, there's got to be a principal structure somewhere in the same lot. C, are screened in accordance with the standards detailed herein if parked for more than 60 days.
If it's there for more than 60 days, you are going to classify it as a permanent structure and has to meet the requirements of the code.
So I guess, what about the scenario where someone constantly has a shipping container there, but it's a different one? So it comes in, it sits, they unload it, it goes out, the next one comes in.
Well, if they're getting rid of them within the 60-day time period, it's moved.
Okay, so even if
Yeah.
the new one comes in.
Which would be like Walmart's use of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Walmart or Lowe's or anyone else getting shipments. You don't want to prevent them from accepting goods or whatever they need.
They're used for storage. I don't think they're using it for shipping.
Yeah.
Well, we're probably going to have to inquire with Walmart to see on some of theirs. Okay, then flipping the page, units remain on site for more than 60 days, even if relocated on the subject parcel, shall be classified as permanent structures and comply with the standards detailed herein.
No stacking, again, same deal.
Yeah. The next one shall meet all other applicable requirements of this section and the ordinance, and E, no stacking of shipping containers shall be permitted. Then F, development requirements, accessory structures shall not be placed in any required parking space. And there's an A, B, and C. A says the location shall be designated so that any access or stacking lanes do not extend into the primary driving aisles.
So that stacking lane is different than the stacking. So what does that mean?
It's a parking lane.
It's a parking lane. Or if you have area, depending on the nature of your land use, where you're going to allow people to stack their cars as if you're picking something up.
Or
From a delivery
staging.
point, staging area. You cannot place a unit and interfere with the normal traffic operation of the property.
Is that clear, Bill, or are you thinking?
I'm still not clear, to be honest with you.
It'd be like a mechanic shop, how he stacks parts, the cars for people to pick up. You can't put a container where we got designated stack parking on the site plan. So if you turn to the site plan and say, this is my auto shop, this is gonna be my stack parking for people, customers come pick up their cars, you can't put a container right there.
Okay.
It has to leave that separate for just stack parking for pickup.
This container can't interfere with the normal operation of the site as approved by the town.
Perfect. Can we say that instead? That's clear.
Personally,
That's clear.
Personally, I think this says that exactly, but
You want in layman's terms?
I mean, that was, now I understood that.
B, surface parking areas shall be configured and restriped to maintain access and circulation to the principal uses. And C, any rooftop mechanical equipment shall be screened.
Okay, so why is that there?
because you may have a refrigerated storage facility, you want it screened. The HVAC unit or whatever on top of the unit, you want it screened.
On the shipping container.
On the shipping container or the storage facility.
Number 2, under development requirements, accessory structures shall not be in an easement unless the easement holder expressly approves the allowance in writing. So, you know, we have a lot of properties around town have drainage easements on the side, utility easements on the side, and they're granted to the town or Duke Energy or Brightspeed. This says you can't place a shipping container there unless that utility provider signs off on it.
Mayor, if I may, one comment about that. Just a general prohibition of it being in an easement is pretty vague. I mean, if you're contemplating only easements to the town or easements to some governmental authority, that's one thing. But lots of properties have private easements. There may be a private driveway easement between a tenant, a shopping center owner, and it's not exclusive. A provision like this gets the town into private civil business. In other words, does the private owner have title that it accommodates this shipping container? And I don't think the town really needs to be getting into the question of conflicting easement rights and property rights, and whether there's a permission, whether the permission is valid, whether there's a dispute between private holders of property interests, any more than your zoning rules when you're measuring setbacks should get the city into a situation if there's a conflict with the boundary line location. You know, denying a permit because there's a private property dispute between owners. I mean, that's a little bit tricky ground to get into. You can leave it here, but I just
Well,
think.
what do you suggest?
Well, I suggest either deleting it for clarifying an easement to the town of Nashville.
Easement,
Or
what?
an easement to the town or another governmental authority. But again, it gets you in the business of going into the land records and seeing, okay, is there a conflict here between the easement privileges and the surface rights, for example? It's a subsurface easement.
So you're saying we need to stay out of that fact?
You know, that's my recommendation, because again, where do you draw the line in the towns?
But we definitely don't want them in the town's easement, because most of those are for waterways.
Right.
Or sewer lines.
Right.
Shoreline shelter.
Exactly. And again, that's just.
We know about
And
those.
and you really don't need to codify that in an ordinance form, because it's a property law matter. I mean, they're trespassing, they're taking action on private property that's inconsistent with the town's property interest in that area of land.
So would you just strike this out
Just
altogether?
delete it.
I think either, my suggestion is easement to the town, or just delete the business of determining if there's an easement conflict and if there's a private property dispute involved where. they can
Leave
serve
the
these
easements
folks.
for the town.
And it doesn't hurt to put it into the town, even though we have to go different routes.
That's judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll
And
change
I
that.
can see some value there because there may be a close call. And, you know, the town, you don't have to file a trespass action to bring this to a resolution. So it probably reinforces the town's position. Just,
And I can see,
we've got an easement, you can't have containers.
and I can see some of, well, you ain't using it for anything.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna hurt nothing sitting there.
Is there any other situations that related to this topic that we need to think about? Is like another easement that would be a concern besides the one the town's at?
I don't think this led to it, but I know there is a area that guys tell me about over there behind the daycare, I can't call it Bees, Kids Place, Kids Bees, where they think there was a shed that was built right close to the easement drainage line. And the guys went out and looked, they were able to do their work, but they still said that they thought it was close to it. I don't think that played any particulars into this writing. That's the only one that can come to mind. That's why I think of that when I went out and guys put the words to do that.
So you in agreement that should we just add unless the easement, you know, to a town or to?
Easement on town easement property, and leave the rest of it alone.
I don't agree with your attorney's synopsis at all, but I'm not an
Tell
attorney.
us why.
That's your thing.
I'm not an attorney, and not to belabor the point. You're getting advice from your legal counsel, and you should consider it. And I'm not going to engage, obviously, in an argument. I have a totally different experience as a 30-year professional planner. If this is causing consternation, then I'd recommend it be deleted outright. But I think that the assessment is incorrect.
Well, then why don't y'all discuss it when y'all get together after this meeting?
Right behind the storage shelter.
I think you should do that.
Well, no, I respect his opinion,
Well-
and I respect his take on why he's recommending to you what he wants to do.
Well, sometimes it's just good to talk.
Yeah,
to
and I'm not trying to set this up in an adversarial scenario with your attorney, but I am going to state my case and just say
But we
that
want to
I
settle
respectfully
this.
disagree.
Well, we want to settle this now and get it
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. Okay.
Hold on. I got the phone here.
No. So Randy, not to steal your thunder, but obviously the next one deals with the accessory structure location on a non-residential property, obviously has to be consistent with what I think the town's interest and goals are. We added subparen 3A, parcels over 2 acres in size may have one accessory structure in front of the principal structure provided district setbacks are maintained, to address a comment from staff. So it's based on size of the property. So if it's over 2 acres, and your building's all the way to the back, the question became from staff, is there harm in allowing an accessory structure, not a temporary unit, but an accessory permanent structure? The answer is no, but the 2 acre minimum lot size I thought was at least a compromise to try to establish some regulatory component as to where you could and could not allow this. So I thought it was a decent compromise to address a concern from staff.
So this is not temporary, because they can't do that.
Correct, this is
permanent.
accessory structure.
Michael, we do have one thought. Ray, you want to continue on, then we'll do this last final thought that we want to bring to you before we
Okay.
head to anything else.
Well, then number 4 is the screening, the minimum 5 foot, is it 5 or 6?
6.
Minimum 5 foot.
6 for your code, and I'm sorry.
6 foot landscaping area shall be required around the perimeter of the accessory structure with the exception of the entrance to the structure. And then we get into G, which is size and
So back
number.
up, so even the 2 acre parcel that we're allowing in the front still has to have the screening around?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's around accessory structures regardless.
good.
And remember, that will be required around a temporary structure if they're for longer than 60 days because you're not classified as permanent.
G is the size and number. No more than 3 accessory structures shall be permitted on a non-residential zone parcel of property. 2, regarding size, accessory buildings on the lot shall not exceed, and there are 3 of them there, 10% of the gross floor area of the principal structure under 10,000 square feet in area, and no greater than 324 square feet, whichever is greater. 2, 15% of the gross floor area of the principal structure, 10,000 square foot to 50,000 square feet in area. And number 3, 20% of the gross floor area of the principal structure exceeding 50,000 square feet in area.
So these are all and, right? 1 and 2. There's only 3, but it could be less if the square footage is different based on 2. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the size. The number is set at 3, but the size of those,
So they're smaller units.
Right.
because there's different shipping container sizes.
Right.
I don't know what the largest one is, but it's probably 53 feet, which is the same as a semi trailer. So that's it. We've gone through the reading.
Mike, we do have a question that I think will put the council at ease. It will probably put our planning board is probably watching this at ease, and a lot of our citizens at ease. I think you have addressed it, but it kind of goes back to one last thing we want to make sure we did cover. If a person that's going into the shipping container business, like we said, and wants to lease land throughout the town, the orders will not allow them to lease a lot to put the shipping container. They have to have it. The principal structure of the business has to be at the same place of the container.
Correct.
All right. I think that puts a lot of citizens at ease just watching live today, knowing that we got that addressed.
Well, and again, you wouldn't allow, and I hate to keep using this example, but it works. You wouldn't allow an auto dealer to store his or her cars all over the town.
Even if you rented these little teeny lots.
It has to be
Right.
associated with the principal use of
Yes.
property. And if you're going to have used car sales or even automobile sales, it has to be in the right district. You have to have the sales office, you have to have parking. At a certain point, it becomes ridiculous to have 10 lots and then have to install the necessary infrastructure on those 10 lots. You're better off using one lot to accommodate all of your cars.
Where does it say that in
You do have
here?
a question in the audience if you want to represent it.
Well, I want to ask a question. So what he just said, is it in here?
It's, well, my humble opinion, it's actually written in your code just from the establishment of the principal land use. It's not in this section I've written up because it's covered in 3 different areas of your code already.
Okay, so it's,
Table permitted uses, 1 principal land use per property. Forgive me for not remembering the citation off the top of my head, but you only issue a zoning permit and allow for an activity to commence once the applicant demonstrates that his or her proposal meets the code. So to park a vehicle on private property and offer it for sale, well, that's an automobile lot, which means where's your sales office, where's all the infrastructure, the parking, everything else, making this a conforming land use. That is covered under 3 different provisions of your code, including a permit process, where we talk about how a zoning permit is applied for and issued or denied.
Who had a question?
Bunch, if you don't
uh-oh.
mind.
Yeah, listen, don't take advantage of us. Go ahead.
Okay, Randy mentioned somewhere along the line that somewhere in here, although I don't see it here, is a definition of a shipping container.
It's not in that draft.
Okay, well, my question would be, since it has arisen in past meetings, I think it needs to be defined if a shipping container can function as an accessory structure, a permanent structure, a storage unit, or a building material. These are all 4 different designations, and so I think somewhere in here, or I want to know where that is. For example, in non-residential land uses area, you've got additional standards, accessory structures, and storage facilities, but then shipping containers aren't mentioned until E. So my immediate question was, well, between 2A and D, does that apply to shipping containers? Because I would think it doesn't, because the term shipping container doesn't come in until E. So I think that leaves some room for confusion.
I don't agree. I have 30 years of professional experience drafting ordinances, and I'm confident that we've addressed the town's concerns.
Well, as a layman who doesn't have that experience, and someone who has to write to make sure that the citizens understand, I contest that because you may understand it perfectly.
Well, that's why you also have professional staff that help the local citizens understand the rules.
Okay, well then, where would the definition be added to this?
It won't be added to this, it'll be put in the definition section of the zoning ordinance, presuming that's what I'm directed to do by the town council.
Can you put that definition back up
Sure.
that you had before? I started writing it down, but I didn't get it all.
Well, if my computer would actually work, yes, I can.
Remember, right, the definition section is the first section.
Yep.
That is right there.
So it's a standardized usable container or structure designed to secure and or store goods for transportation or storage, typically made of steel or metal.
Okay, so then,
And we're gonna add pod in there too.
okay, so then this, according to that definition, it can be used as an accessory structure and a permanent structure and a primary house dwelling, or not?
I don't understand your question. How about rephrasing it for me?
Okay,
I mean, I think you're trying to parse out the amendment inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the amendment, ignoring the zoning ordinance in its full scope and width.
no,
So
I'm just trying to clarify where and how shipping containers can be used. And so earlier at one point, I believe, and this was a follow-up question, it was mentioned that a shipping container could be used as a residence, because you yourself gave an example of that. So I'm guessing in that case, that is not covered in this amendment. That would be covered under some other part of the town.
We're not going to be amending the code. It is your responsibility as a property owner, if you wish to use a shipping container for a residential structure, to work with Nash County building inspections to bring it up at the single-family residential building code. We would only be issuing a zoning permit allowing the construction of a single-family residence. The mechanism by which you facilitate that construction is going to be between you and Nash County inspections. If Nash County inspections cannot and will not issue a building permit for a shipping container, you can't do it.
Understood. Okay, understand that.
Can you bring up our definition of accessory structure?
I would have to go to your ordinance.
So while he's hunting that then, just to make sure I understand this correctly, a shipping container can be used as an accessory structure under this solely for non-residential areas, correct? Is that right?
Technically, I think if they go get a permit for a structure and it meets the code, then they can use it, but they can't use it in this form that it comes in. It's got to be adapted to meet the code. I understand exactly.
It's not just applicable to your zoning code, it's the building code.
Correct.
So if you're using a structure that will be partially for habitable purposes, then it has to be brought up to the applicable state building code definition, which we don't have any authority over.
But the definition of accessory building means a detached subordinate structure operated and maintained under the same ownership and located on the same lot as the main building. No such building shall be inhabited or used by other than the owners unless the tenant of the premises or their employees.
So shipping containers can be used as accessory buildings in B1 and I1 then?
If you go through the appropriate permitting process.
Okay.
And if they're permanent, they have to meet the applicable standards of the code.
Michael, kind of as a, Nancy, you know you got any more?
Not, no.
Michael, kind of as a follow-up question from some of the citizens I talked with last night who weren't able to make it to today's meeting. They just wanted to know, we talked about the grandfathered in with the ones who already have an existing, their grandfather, we don't like to use that word. But,
They just have to follow your non-conforming section of your code.
okay, they can't just.
But everybody I know understands the concept of grandfather. From a practical standpoint, it's the town enforcing its non-conforming section
Gotcha.
as it relates to those activities.
I think that'd be a good answer.
Any other
Mayor,
questions?
I think we do have another question from the audience.
One more question.
I want clarification on one thing. This is towards Raz more than anybody else. In one of my former employers, we dealt with right-of-ways and easements. And right-of-way was property that was purchased, or a parcel of property that was purchased for the purpose of putting a sewer line, water line, utility line, internet, whatever. Easements were acquired to give utilities and city governments, whatever, access to those points. Am I correct in that? Because the property owners still own the property the easement was on versus the right-of-way where the town purchased a strip 15, 20, 100, whatever foot long in the distance they needed to run those utilities. Am I correct in that definition?
Mayor, Council Alex, I'll respond to that. Right-of-way is not a legal term. Generally speaking, folks working in government circles, working in utility circles, they talk about right-of-way as just being a linear easement that allows the use of private property for a variety of purposes. Electric distribution, power line, telephone, cable television, gas, water, sewer, so on. An easement is a legal term, and an easement interest in property is an estate for a special, limited purpose, a particularly described purpose, that encumbers or burdens the underlying outright, fee simple ownership of property. We always talk about who owns the dirt versus who owns an easement on the dirt. But the reason I made a comment that I did before is that easement is just the broadest possible legal term for a special purpose estate or interest in land. And it's everything from access easements, driveways, water, sewer. You've got viewscape easements, you have conservation easements, you have preservation, historic preservation easements. They are so broad that when I see just the term easement being used for a particular reason, without perhaps a full understanding of how broad the concept of an easement is, I get a little bit uptight about that. And so like I say, right-of-way is typically, I can't tell you how many utility officers, they say, well, we can put our vehicles down here because it's right-of-way. And they're thinking that, well, it's almost outright ownership. We've got unlimited rights because it's public right-of-way. No, a sewer easement can only be used for sewer, and you can't use it for recreation, you can't use it for access to get from point A to point B. You've just got to be very careful about the scope and extent of an easement, or category of an easement. Just a general reference to, if there's an easement, the town's got to see some evidence of permission. Otherwise, that might give reason to deny a permit, or find this violation. That's a little worrisome because it's so broad. And again, it's private property law concepts we're talking about as opposed to the scope and extent of governmental regulations. Not to give you too long an answer. That was the reason my concern about the term easement being kind of squishy.
Any other questions from the council?
What did we decide to leave that in, take it out, or adjust it? That's the
They're gonna
question.
talk about it.
Well, they're gonna find out.
They're gonna talk about it. We might have a compromise, but we're gonna let them resolve that.
Oh, it won't be a fight, it's just, I have a difference
Well,
of
you need to
opinion,
have a
and
conversation.
we're gonna have a good
Compromise.
conversation.
That's right. Nothing wrong with that. That's the problem with us now. We can't talk and discuss stuff without getting ill.
Maybe if I make one point. I've been doing this a long time too, and I've had to stand in front of judges. And as a general principle, I'll tell you that courts reviewing local government ordinances in the area of land use regulation are extremely skeptical of local land use regulation. So I would just urge you, whatever ordinance you finally adopt, have it be as simple as you possibly can get it, and clear and absolutely unambiguous, because there is recent case law that says that any ambiguity in a local land use regulation ordinance is going to be construed in favor of the free and unregulated use of private property. And some lawyers are saying, well, if there's reason to have a discussion about what was intended, that's ambiguity, judgment for the landowner.
Right.
So that's the environment that we have to operate in. And so I would just urge brevity,
Keep it
and
simple.
absolute clarity,
Keep it simple.
if you will.
Any other? Any other input, questions from the council?
Mayor, I think we discussed this by as thoroughly as we can get it with the assistance of our attorney, this gentleman here. I think we'll just abide by what they come up with on the end, and I know there's no further business that we end this from today.
I do have one question. Whereas if we were to incorporate your suggestions and changes into what we discussed today, do you think it meets the standard of brevity and clarity?
I was wondering the same thing.
I don't have the crystal ball. I mean, that is a judgment call, obviously. I mean, I think all of the objectives here are legitimate. I had raised, like I said, I thought you needed a definition of shipping containers because in my world, at least in my view, shipping containers are these big transoceanic containers that are being adapted for reuse for a different purpose. Obviously, a pod is something totally different. I mean, you can talk about metal boxes that are fully enclosed that people use for storage, but in my view, we really need to define and be very clear on what you're talking about, because obviously a pod is not being adapted from shipping container use
Is
to
pod
something
defined
else.
in our ordinance?
I don't believe it is.
No, we
We're
don't.
just lumping it into the shipping container.
When you put a top on a dumpster, a roll-off dumpster, you get a shipping container.
So, but, like Raz was talking about, my feeling on a pod is when somebody's moving.
Yeah.
And that's, could be different than a shipping container. Because that's,
Different
that,
size.
Well, it doesn't matter what the activity is. It only matters the structure. It only matters, you are establishing standards. The fact that you, not you personally, but the fact that you may look at a pod differently than something that was used on a ship, it's still going to do the same thing. You are only regulating form, function, location. There is inherently no difference in a pod container, as you see on the TV, and the shipping container used for temporary storage on property. You're going to treat them both
what
the
about
same
a
way.
truck off the trailer?
Same way.
Same
You're going
thing.
to treat the same
Do we need to
way.
make sure that says all that then, in the definition?
That's what I've been tasked with doing, yes.
So I think the definition needs to be a little more words to it.
And you're not finished with that definition, are you?
I know you just
Michael?
came up with
this kind of
Your
with this morning.
satisfaction.
Yeah, maybe get with Raz on the definition too,
I think we need to add a few more words. Not confusing it, but,
making it clear.
Maybe.
yeah.
Well, just making it right.
Yeah.
Fair. Yes.
Hey, can I give you some information on the shipping container? So a shipping container and a pod and everything, that's all the same thing. A pod is just a trade name, okay? Pod actually goes on a tractor trailer and delivered just like a shipping container is. You got three sides of shipping container. You got a 20-foot, 40-foot, and what they call a high cube foot container. High cube is 9 foot 6 inches tall. A regular container is 8'6" container height. So I got multiple shipping containers on my property in town. Okay. Sean, I'm glad y'all did this, and I'm very pleased on what y'all come up with. One thing I want to say about the pods, what you call the pods and shipping containers, talking about going in front yards. Remember, a tractor trailer or a rollback has to deliver them things, and they are limited where they can put them. So if your house catches on fire and you need to store stuff until the contractors, contractors now, they don't do nothing quick. It could be a year project and then end up being a 4-year project. They would have to drop that pod or that shipping container in the driveway or in the front yard. You can't go around the house, you can't go in the back. It's just, you're limited what you can do.
I thought about that actually.
I was thinking about that because when my son moved from Minnesota to Ohio, they brought the pod in to the side of his house and we loaded it and then they came, picked it up, shipped it off.
So that is a fair point. If you have a house that does not allow for side access, like if it's too close to the house next to it for the tractor trailer to come in, we could allow for a driveway. To drop it in the
Yeah, for
driveway.
temporary use, I'm okay with the driveway.
Well, I think that's where you need to put it temporary, and we'll get with
You
Mr.
said go
Harvey.
Case by case.
Well,
Can't do case by
Can't
case.
do case by case. It needs to be
But if we
definitive.
allow for a driveway, I think that solves the problem, because they can back it up and plop it into a driveway, which,
Okay. So you would have a
Pack it up.
preference to provide some flexibility for it to be in the driveway so long as it meets the front yard setback.
if it's temporary, like they're packing up to
Right.
move.
or fire, yeah.
To be honest with you, it's probably better in the driveway than on the side of the house, some places. So, I mean,
Any other? If not, we have a motion to adjourn from Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and meeting is adjourned.